My name's Evan. I work with the city's preservation department. When old buildings are scheduled for demolition, I go in first, take photos, log details, and make sure there's nothing worth saving. It's a quiet job, but every once in a while, I end up somewhere that should have been left alone. This story happened 3 months ago at Hollingworth Girls' Boarding School. The building had been closed since 1978 after a fire took 13 lives. The cause was faulty wiring, but the fire chief's report had notes scratched out, entire pages missing. People in town said the school was cursed, that it still burned some nights, even after 40 years. I didn't believe that kind of thing, until that night. The place sat on a hill behind the woods swallowed by vines and fog. The front gates were rusted shut, so I had to climb over. As soon as I landed on the other side, my phone signal died. No bars. Not even emergency calls. The building was huge. 3 floors, a bell tower, and windows black with soot. The last light of the evening hit the sign above the entrance. The words were almost gone, but I could still read it. Hollingworth Academy, where the future begins. I remember thinking, yeah, not anymore. Inside, everything smelled like old smoke and wet plaster. The hallways were lined with student photos, dozens of smiling faces frozen in time. Their eyes were faded from sun damage, but somehow they still looked alive. I started taking pictures for the report. My flashlight beam caught words scrawled across a locker in white chalk. "Don't let her ring the bell." I assumed it was graffiti, but then I found the same words again, written on the floor of the assembly hall, only this time scratched into the wood. When I got to the classrooms, I noticed something strange. Every clock was stopped, all at 2:47 a.m., the exact minute the fire supposedly started. Around midnight, I reached the dormitory wing. It was worse here. Ceilings half collapsed, burn marks climbing up the walls, but one door stood out, dorm room 12. The wood was untouched. Even the paint was fresh, like someone had just repainted it. When I turned the knob, a wave of warm air hit my face. Inside, the room looked lived in. Beds made, books on desks, a few dolls sitting upright on the pillows. There was a faint sound, too, a humming, soft and tuneless, like someone humming through their teeth. I called out. No answer. The humming stopped. That's when I noticed the silver bell on the nightstand. It was small, delicate, the kind used for class calls or dinner announcements. But the metal was scorched, blackened. Without thinking, I lifted it. The moment I did, something shifted in the air. The smell of smoke thickened, the temperature dropped, and from somewhere down the hall, a single clock started ticking again. I turned off my flashlight. Instant regret, because the darkness wasn't empty. It moved. I could hear the faint creak of floorboards, footsteps too light to be mine. And then, a girl's voice whispered, right next to my ear. "We can't wake her up." The bell in my hand rang on its own, just once, high, clear, like a heartbeat of sound. The hallway lights, long dead, flickered to life one by one, leading deeper into the dormitory. I followed stupidly, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the wiring. At the end of the corridor there was another room, the old chapel. I pushed the door open, and immediately I smelled smoke. Not old smoke, fresh. Inside, the pews were charred black, candles melted into lumps. But in the center stood a shadow, small, child-sized, facing the altar. I thought it was a burnt statue, until it moved. It turned slowly, and I saw her. A girl in a half-burned uniform, face pale and cracked like porcelain, eyes hollow. She lifted her hand, and in it, she held another bell. When she rang it, the walls groaned. Flames bloomed out of the air, racing up the pews. The sound was deafening. 1,000 ticking clocks, 1,000 bells. And behind her, more shapes appeared. 13 of them, all girls, standing in the firelight, silent. I ran. The halls were on fire again, smoke choking every corner, but none of it felt real. When I looked back once, just once, the fire stopped mid-air, frozen. And the girl was still standing there, smiling. I don't remember getting out. I woke up in my car, parked at the gates. The school behind me was dark again. No smoke, no flames. Just the same silence. The bell I found in dorm room 12 was sitting on the passenger seat beside me. I threw it into the woods, drove away without looking back. But that wasn't the end. The next morning, when I uploaded the photos I'd taken, every picture from inside the school was black, all except one. It showed a girl in uniform standing by a window, and in her hand, that same silver bell. Now, every night since then, I hear a faint ringing somewhere in my apartment, always around 2:47 a.m. I got rid of the bell, I know I did. But somehow, I think she didn't stay behind. This is the end of our first story. Let's move on to the next story from here.
I used to work as a maintenance contractor for the city. Small repairs, late-night checks, the kind of work no one else wanted. One night, I was sent to inspect Station 59, part of the old metro line that had been closed for over 20 years. The line flooded back in 2003 after a burst water main, and the whole section was sealed off. Now the city was planning to reopen it. My job was simple: go down, take water samples, and make sure the lower tunnels were safe. They told me I'd be down there alone. That was the first lie. The elevator leading underground was old. It groaned the whole way down. When the doors opened, a wall of damp, metallic air hit me. The smell of rust, mildew, and something else. Something that reminded me of old blood. The tunnel was half lit by backup lamps running on a separate generator. Their glow shimmered on the standing water that covered most of the floor. It looked like the entire station was holding its breath. I started recording audio notes for my report. Station 59, I said. Lower level submerged, estimated depth. That's when I heard it. A splash. Far down the tunnel. At first, I thought it was water dripping from the ceiling, but the sound was rhythmic, steady, like footsteps, moving slowly toward me. I pointed my flashlight into the dark, and the beam hit the water, ripples spreading, no movement, no one there. I turned back to the platform, but something made me stop. There were posters still on the walls, faded and peeling. One of them showed a little girl holding a balloon. But as my light hit it, the ink looked smeared. The girl's face was gone, washed away by water. All that was left was the balloon, floating above a black void. I tried to laugh it off. That's when my radio cracked to life, static, then a voice, faint, female, whispering, "Train's late again." I froze. My radio wasn't even powered on. The power flickered. The lamps overhead dimmed, and for a moment, I was in total darkness. Then, a sound I'll never forget. Metal screeching down the tunnel like something massive dragging against the rails. The air pressure dropped, my ears popped, and from deep below the flooded track came the faintest vibration, like a train was passing through. But there hadn't been trains here in decades. I aimed my flashlight toward the track. That's when I saw it. Bubbles rising slowly from beneath the water, spreading toward me, each one larger than the last. And then, a shape broke the surface. At first, it looked like a mannequin, bloated and pale, tangled in weeds. But it wasn't still. Its chest rose, fell, and it turned its head toward me. I stumbled backward, slipping on the wet concrete, my flashlight spinning away. For a split second, the beam caught its face, eyes white and swollen, mouth wide open, water spilling out. And yet, it was breathing. It reached out with both hands and sank again, disappearing beneath the surface without a sound. I ran toward the elevator, but the tunnel seemed longer than before. Every step echoed like I was in a different place, not the station, but something older. Somewhere between the walls, I heard more voices. Whispers, murmurs, people talking softly like hundreds waiting for a train that would never come. The elevator lights were flickering when I reached it. I slammed the button again and again, but nothing happened. Behind me, water began rising. Fast, unnaturally fast, as if the tunnel itself was filling from below. I climbed onto a bench, my flashlight beam cutting through the rising fog. Then the overhead speakers came to life. A woman's voice, calm, distorted. Now arriving at Station 59. And I swear I saw it. Lights moving down the flooded tunnel. The reflection of a train cutting through the water, completely silent. Its windows glowed faint blue, and inside there were silhouettes. Dozens of them. Still, watching. When the elevator finally opened, I jumped in and hit the button repeatedly. The doors began to close, and just before they did, I saw a single hand rise out of the water, gripping the edge of the platform. It wasn't reaching for help, it was waving goodbye. The next morning, my supervisor asked why I hadn't taken any samples. I told him the station wasn't safe. He laughed, said no one had been able to open that elevator for months. When I went back with him later that day, the entire lower level was sealed by concrete. No water, no lights. Just a warning sign. Flooded section closed since 2003. But here's the part that keeps me up. When I checked the log later that night, the audio recorder had captured something else. Just before the static cut out, a faint voice whispered, "Train's late again," followed by the soft sound of a bell ringing underwater.